All right, welcome to the November 18th Housing and Community Development Committee. We'll roll call in to establish a quorum.
Chair Burns,
Here.
Councilmember Isles,
Here.
Councilmember Heracariz,
Here.
Councilmember Rogers,
Here.
Committee Member King,
Here.
Committee Member Murray,
Here.
Committee Member Entamera, and Committee Member Salome.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, and I don't think we have anybody participating, any committee members requesting to attend remotely, so we can move on to item 3, public input on draft 2026 action plan.
We have a public comment for the 2026 action plan from Tina Payton.
Good evening. While reading the action plan, it's just a different year. 2025 looks the same. Affordable housing, we don't have much of it. Talking about creating livable communities. Surveys show that the community members want improvements on parks. These are the recent, in the last 5 years, what we spent on parks and rec. Ecology Center, $3.9 million. Twiggs Skate Park, $1.7 million. Twiggs Park remodeled, $950,000. Cartwright Park, $1.35 million. James Park, $1.9 million. Fitzsimmons Park, $900,000. Independent Park, $1.7 million. Philbrick Park, $1.17 million. Beck Park, $3.6 million. James Park Pickleball Court, $650,000. Arrington Lagoon repairs, $1.387 million. Chandler Newberger renovation, $750,000. Gray Park Dog Park, $400,000. Larimer Park, $1.29 million. Purchase and remodel of the Preto Center, $4.9 million. Family Focus, $3 million. The Shoreline repairs, $28.7 million, which includes Lee Street Beach, Lincoln Street, Greenwood Beach, Dog Beach, Sheridan Road, and Clark Street Beach. Now, I guess you can use the home funds and buy some tents, and they can live in the parks, because that totals $58,246,000 we've spent on parks. And if you add Robert Crown and the Dog Pound, that's another $60 million, 400, for a grand total of $118 million, 646,000 on parks and recs and a dog pound. So what is that telling people about what you care about homelessness? And this committee should put higher standards and hold our city responsible for not spending this kind of money on parks and recs, and spend money on housing, what you say you need to help affordable housing for homeless. This is a disgrace, and so is the plan every year. It's just repetitive and no solutions. We need more money for affordable housing and less on parks and recs.
That's it for 2026 action plan public comments. Are there any other people?
Yeah, so next up we have the public comment list. Just the regular public comment list.
Can you turn around? Action plan.
signed up on the sign-up sheet?
Anyone else is interested for 2026 action plan public comment?
We'll move on to the regular public comment list, please.
Okay, regular public comment is Malika Gardner, followed by Ahmad Garrett.
How many minutes we get?
I haven't decided. You'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Okay. Good evening. My name is Malika Gardner. I'm a legislative advocate here in Evanston. I've been doing community engagement here for over 10 years. I run a platform called Where the People Meet, and we've been getting the voices of the people for quite some time. For an entire year, we have worked on the Evanston Property Tax Circuit Breaker program with seriousness, care, and integrity. We met with Cook County leadership in multiple meetings. We met with housing experts, Gail Schechter being one of them, and she supports this program. We met with residents who shared how many of them have fallen through the cracks of the Cook County and state tax programs, which is why, another reason why we came up with this program. After we reviewed the strategic housing plan, knowing it contains no property tax relief program, also confirmed by Sarah Flax, there's nothing there for property tax relief for homeowners. We built what the plan was missing. Let me also make this clear for the record. Councilmember Claire Kelly and I reached out repeatedly to City Manager Luke Stowe and Chief Legislative Advisor Liza Roberson Young, asking for assistance, data, analysis, just basic support to strengthen this program. And this has been a year. And you can FOIA every request that we reached out. This is all documented. We received none. No help. No help. Every request, every non-response, every response can be FOIA'd. And I just find that very interesting for a program like this to help people with property tax relief, that the city staff would not assist us. And that can be proven. But we kept working. We brought in a Northwestern student who has legislative background in the state of Texas. He's a policy major at Northwestern, and he helped us with the research because we had to get out there and just do it ourselves. Ahmad Garrett, which you'll hear from a little later, and we really appreciate all of his work. And I also have passed state legislation, 2 bills that passed in 2021. So I'm not new to this. So it was a bit insulting when council members last week said, oh, I appreciate the little intent, like we're kids that don't know what we're doing. Or that, oh, it's such a little kernel of an idea. We did work. We got a clue about how this works on the state level as well as local. Again, we kept going. So after all that work, after a year of meetings and research, to hear council members say that was quite disrespectful. It wasn't accurate. It was insulting. Everything you needed was in the packet, and I know that a good 5 council members did not read that packet all the way through because the comments that were made just made no sense. Just in short, square footage would eliminate mansions. Evanston now made a big point of that we were going to help out the rich. Councilmember Perry L. Davis came up with the square footage, and I thought that that was very creative and very, very helpful to make sure that our lakefront residents don't take advantage of a program like this. 15 years residency plus. These are people who have paid their taxes and built this city. They built this city. Income caps. The only portion of the NU Affordable Housing Fund, we just wanted a portion of it. We're not even asking for all of it, just a portion of it for the pilot program, just for the pilot year. We're not even asking for all of that money. It would be direct tax relief to the residents, no third-party organizations getting their cuts or backroom deals that we know goes down in Evanston, okay? And renters would be added to the pilot after the pilot year. That was made very clear in the packet. Renters would be added. We can't forget the renters. But we wanted to make it as simple as possible for this pilot year and focus on the homeowners. And I thought it was fantastic that Councilmember Tom Suffredin stepped in last week and said, let's not focus on the people that this program won't help right now. Let's focus on the ones that it will help right now. So I appreciate him saying that. So the facts were there if it had been read. I'm almost done. So I want to ask something real here. I'm trying to stick to the script so I don't go off on a tangent like I did last week. If you understood what residents are facing and if you understood what's coming with these tax increases, why wouldn't you want a relief plan in place? Because we know it's coming. The wave is coming. Here is the truth every person on this dais needs to hear. If you do not have generational wealth, it is not if property taxes will overwhelm your household. It's when. Everybody on this dais is going to feel it at some point. If you're not feeling it right now, you will eventually. You will eventually. Every one of you will eventually feel what thousands are already feeling, that moment when the tax bill arrives and your stomach drops, that fear, that pressure, that uncertainty. And I'll close with this. Unless this dais is fully insulated by wealth, which I don't believe everyone up here is filthy rich, everybody's working hard, you're not exempt. No one is. So stalling this program, not placing it on tonight's agenda, sends a message residents are already hearing too loudly, that their stability is not the priority. I'm asking firmly and respectfully, place this program on your next agenda. Let it move forward. Let the public see that this relief for longtime homeowners is something this committee stands behind, not something it buries to die. And Councilmember Claire Kelly made it very clear last week that she is open to suggestions, amendments to make the program stronger because this is about the people. It's not about ego. It's not about fighting over the money. And from what I've seen from the finances and the budget, there's plenty of money in Evanston to go around to help people who have been here for years. Plenty. I don't know if the feds need to come in and do a forensic audit. I don't know what's going on. But fighting over $500,000 from Northwestern, that they owe us 10 times more than that. But she is open, and she was compromising as a leader that we can work on this and build this program and get it out ASAP because it's urgent. It is urgent, not sitting around and waiting a whole nother year or 2 years or letting it stall to die. And that's going to speak to who you all are if you allow that to happen. And trust and believe, we won't forget. Thank you.
Next up is Ahmad Garrett, followed by Megan McClung.
Good evening, Housing and Community Development Committee. My name is Ahmad Garrett, and I'm a first-year student at Northwestern University, and I've had the privilege to work on the proposed Community Circuit Breaker program with Councilwoman Claire Kelly and Malika Gardner. And today I stand before you all to reiterate the urgency and the critical necessity of its implementation. As you all know, the rising cost of property taxes threatens the ability of long-term rooted residents to remain in their homes. A solution must be implemented that helps sustain aging in place. A community benefit that the CDC defines as the ability to live in one's home and community safely, independently, and comfortably, regardless of age, income, or ability level. The Circuit Breaker program, which I look forward to being discussed at the next meeting, helps ensure this. My colleagues and I have worked diligently on this project to ensure relief is targeted toward those most burdened by rising property taxes. Although confident of the benefit the proposal would provide in the nature it's currently in, I welcome constructive critiques that can strengthen its impact. Before I conclude, I would like to address some of the concerns regarding the exclusion of renters. Despite the prevalence of severe cost burden among renters, a large percentage of cost burden renters, according to the data from the Evanston Housing Gap Analysis, are Northwestern students. In the 2 census tracts or areas from the report where renting costs exceeds 50% of their income, are tracts that have, quote, the strongest influence from Northwestern. These tracts from the report are 8093 and 8094.02, which are both adjacent to Northwestern's campus. Including renters into a single threshold circuit breaker program such as the one proposed would also increase program costs as more people would qualify and they would qualify for larger credits. And lastly, it would increase administrative burdens, which some members of the community expressed their concern about last week. I look forward to the discussion in the following days. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Up next is Megan McClung, followed by Kevin Grigsby.
Good evening, council and committee members. I'm here today because housing stability is youth stability, and the decisions now shape the futures of the families in Evanston and that the Moran Center serves. My name is Megan McClung. I'm a managing attorney at the Moran Center for Youth Advocacy, where I have served and worked for the last 7 years for the Evanston community. I am a Glenview resident. I'm here because in my work, I advocate for youth and for their families, many whom are deeply affected by housing instability. And if we are going to talk about the future of affordable housing in Evanston, we must center families and emerging youth who rely on stable homes to thrive. Every week, I see Evanston families push to communities like to Des Plaines, Waukegan, Zion, because we simply do not have enough affordable homes. These communities, they have more available housing, lower costs, landlords who are willing to accept housing vouchers and do repairs. I see how stable housing anchors families. It opens access to services and creates conditions for young people to succeed in our schools. The city's Housing for All strategic plan reflects a tremendous amount of hard work. It's strong, and with refinements, it can become actionable and transformative. I urge council to look at the letter of support submitted by the Moran Center and also on behalf of the collective, which is a collective of youth serving agencies. I just want to highlight several key steps. Expand funding for the creation and preservation of affordable housing, use impact fees and targeted taxes to generate long-term sustainable revenue for affordable housing, and increase Evanston's housing base by 2,500 to 5,000 units to keep rents stable for families, have measurable outcomes. I'll just point out that Minneapolis offers a clear example by increasing its housing stock by about 12% between 2017 and 2022. Rent growth remained flat, demonstrating that expanding the housing supply naturally stabilizes rent costs. Just in conclusion, Evanston's family and youth deserve the stability that comes from a safe, affordable home. And with intention and action, you can build a strong community where they can stay, grow, and thrive. So strengthen and refine the Housing for All plan. Thank you.
Up next is Kevin Grigsby, followed by Emerick Masibuko.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Grigsby. I'm a staff attorney at the Moran Center for Youth Advocacy. I've worked here in the Evanston community for the last 3.5 years, serving low-income families, mainly focusing on eviction defense. And I've had the opportunity to review the Housing for All strategic plan, and while I do believe the plan has some great ideas, I also, in my experience, have learned that for our clients and the community members that we work with, housing is not an abstraction. For them, it is often the first domino to fall when things start to go awry. And because of that, I believe that one focus of the plan needs to be to elevate anti-displacement and tenant protections to the highest level of priority. Because as we speak, Evanstonians are being pushed out of the community. And I think that a few ways to achieve this are, one, advancing just cause protections. I know that this is something that was discussed a lot last fall. And, you know, without just cause protections, whether, you know, even if you've been in the community renting for 20 years, never missed a rent payment, and never caused issues with your landlord, he can decide to, you know, towards the end of your lease that he no longer wants to rent to you, and all that landlord needs to do is provide 90 days notice, and you will be without the home that you've had for 20 years. And so without just cause, all Evanston renters are truly at risk of being pushed out of the community. I also believe that expanding rental assistance programs would be a vital resource for Evanstonians. Oftentimes we see, in my practice, I see families or parents who simply fall on hard times for 1 or 2 months. And so expanding rental assistance and having a resource that might be able to help them pay 1 month rent or 2 months rent, again, would help them stay in the community. And then finally, I think that creating some kind of oversight system for the residential landlord-tenant ordinance is really imperative. There are great protections listed in the ordinance, but without the staff or individuals to field complaints from tenants, without the staff to go out and investigate and look at housing conditions and then hold landlords accountable, it is again forcing tenants into this difficult situation where they either have to stay and pay rent under conditions that are barely habitable, or try to go find alternate housing in a community where there's a lack of affordable housing. So I think that, again, this is a very great plan and has great ideas, but also, again, just focusing at the highest level of protecting the community members here in Evanston right now is also very important. Thank you for your time.
Up next is Emerick Matibuco, followed by William Carter.
Good evening. Name is Emerick Mazibuko. I am the father, and I work here in Evanston. And to continue on Kevin's point on what this plan would do, it would also improve oversight, accountability, and community input. And to ensure transparency and trust, the city should then establish a strategic plan oversight, a committee, similar in function to the Land Use Commission, but composed of diverse representatives, including affordable housing practitioners, racial equity, and community development leaders, and residents directly impacted by housing insecurity or displacement. This independent committee would then track progress towards plan goals, provide ongoing public input and evaluation, issue annual recommendations to the council itself. And embedding this accountability structure will prevent Housing for All from becoming another plan on the shelf. And Evanston has had a lot of plans, and we all know where they are. But in the meantime, Kenosha, Waukegan, and Des Plaines continue to fill the void, for affordable housing in Evanston. Thank you.
Up next is William Carter, followed by Jessica Trujillo.
Good evening, committee members. I will try and be brief. We've heard facts, we've heard figures, we've heard impassioned pleas. Historically, they mean nothing. Because my question is going to be, who are you for? Evanston, the tenants, the residents, the people who voted for you, who support you? Or are we for Northwest University, developers, people who want their pockets filled? Because I don't see much support for the residents of Evanston. I've heard a great conversation about the youth of Evanston. I've given conversation about the elderly of Evanston. We don't have the support. The elderly are on broke incomes, barely pulling in $30,000 a year. How are they going to afford to pay rent on a studio that is being built that's $2,800 a month? That's called affordable housing? No, it's not affordable housing. They can't afford that. We can't afford that. Very few people in Evanston can afford that. Now, those rich folks at Northwest University, their parents can afford that. And that's what I see going on with that building over there on 605. Northwest University housing, not Evanston family housing, because no family is going to live in a studio for that amount of money. Who are you for? Can you look at me when I speak, please? Who are you for? The residents of Evanston or the people with the money? That's all I have to say to you.
Up next is Jessica Trujillo, followed by Hugo Rodriguez.
Hello. I have a bunch of notes on paper. My name's Jessica. I've been an Evanston resident for 13 years. I've lived in the 8th ward for 10 of them. I have 4 children. 2 are now in the high school here. 2 are still in District 65. There's a lot of things I'd like to talk about tonight. I came prepared to just bring up that the reality is that District 65 is facing a huge financial crisis, and it's been really divisive in the community of families. District 65 serves all of Evanston, and it funnels into the one high school that we have here. I'm a single mother of 4, not by choice. I'm a victim of domestic violence. I had a co-parent leave the community, but I didn't.
I'm sorry, can I ask her to speak up, please?
Sorry.
Closer to the mic, I can barely hear her.
I don't really, I didn't have a different home to go to. Evanston's been my home. I've been a renter since I've moved here, so 13 years. I've invested in this community. My oldest son, now 16, started school here. My youngest, my plan is to continue here. Go back to District 65 is that we've already faced one school closure, that's definite. And the reality is that there's a risk of 1, if not 2 to 4 school closures potentially to face the financial crisis that we're in. My understanding, I'm not a professional, I've just been showing up and listening, is that there's a decline in enrollment, and I think there's a lot of pressure from families to leave Evanston with the risk of the schools closing, because the reality is a lot of families have intentionally moved to Evanston or invested their time, whether it's owning property or the reality, as it's been brought up, that it's nearly half of Evanston that are actually renters. So for 13 years, I've been investing my income into Evanston without a home of my own to call at the end of the day. I am actually at risk of displacement at the moment. I've faced this challenge multiple times, and I've reached out to the community resources available, but even with Just Cause, which I've come to speak about Just Cause, you will see me again to come back and speak about Just Cause. I know it's not on the table right now. Even with Just Cause, many families are facing a financial crisis to stay in Evanston, whether it's a choice, but the practical matter of not having affordable housing. So at risk of displacement means I might not be able to find any other housing in Evanston again. And I look every month, pretty much. I look at the market because I say, well, what happens? Because I'm working 3 jobs. I have 3 different schedules. I'm doing what I can. Hours are reduced left and right in lots of different businesses right now. And the cost of living's gone up. I gave up owning a vehicle in May of this year. And the weather's been great. I have older kids. And the city of Evanston, actually, the infrastructure is amazing. We've got buses, we can bike, we can walk. I couldn't have stayed in this city without the infrastructure that we have. My oldest son visits Twiggs Park daily. My children go to all of the community parks. I think that investment's actually amazing. And that's what brings and keeps families here. But we are in such desperate need of more affordable housing. And I don't know really what it's going to look like and the job that you can do as a community. But I just feel like it's important to, as private as it is, to show up and say that this is, I'm an Evanstonian here now. This is my home. I have kids here and I want to stay here. And I know lots of people that do. And there's lots of people that want to come here, that would invest in their community. They'd go to the parks, they'd enroll in programs, they'd contribute to this community. And I want to see that we can move forward finding a way where we can come together as a community that values the accessibility that we've provided for families, and not just families, university students, the elderly, all the people that make up the Evanston community. But I think we are actually at risk of losing families and losing the youth being able to come here, and the youth that's growing up having to leave to go somewhere else because they can't afford to stay here. I grew up in Southern California. That was part of my journey, is I didn't want to live at home, but I couldn't move out and stay there. And, long journey. I've been here. And I just am waiting to see that play out as my children get older, wondering, do I have to leave sooner? Do I have to find a place for them? Are they going to be able to stay here? And what that's going to look like. And I think we all have an opportunity to each day have the conversation of what we actually want Evanston to look like, what we want to maintain here, and what we want to build, because there are things that need to change, and I see these changes happening. I think we do all need to continue the conversation about the vision of what we want Evanston to look like. And I want to say, I want to stay here. I hope it includes me and my children, but I want to see new faces. I want to see the kids coming through our schools. I don't want to see the schools close, even if that's a reality. I don't want to see our school system get smaller and smaller because we just can't, people can't afford to come here to have their families, because it's a beautiful community and we really have invested so much in making it beautiful and giving families the spaces to utilize and build the memories that they want to have here. So thank you.
Next up is Hugo Rodriguez, followed by Tina Payton.
Good evening. My name is Hugo Rodriguez. I'm a resident on the 8th Ward. Hearing all what's been said here today made me think of 2 words. The first one is Ubuntu, and it's a word used by Nelson Mandela. Is a South African word, and by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And it means, I am because we are. I am a part of a community. I've been in Evanston for a little bit over 20 years, and I truly feel a member of this community. I think this is my home. The second word, it's Nahuatl. Very antique word, also very old. It's tequio. Tequio means unremunerated work for the community. And that's what some of you do. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm here to talk about the Evanston property tax circuit breaker for seniors. And I hear a lot of misconceptions about it. I also, like many others, disappointed that the city council decided not to take action on it for this year. But I tell you my perspective on why it's relevant. It's because of community. If every member of our community that we lose a part of ourselves. And if we don't see it that way, we are in the wrong path. I think that the city of Evanston talks about affordable housing through their ears, through every orifice that they can find to say that we're looking for affordable housing in our city. And we better stop kidding about it. We're joking about it. Affordable housing is to maintain what we have. And part of it is our seniors, the most needed ones. Not everybody qualifies for that program on the circuit breaker. It's only very few that will qualify for that. The pilot program calls for not even $500,000 to run that program. But every member that we lose because taxes go up, we're losing a part of ourselves. And I tell you how taxes go up in our world is if my neighbor sells their house for $500,000, that house was taxed at about $500,000. But the next house, they knock it down and they build $1.5 million house, $1.5 million. So the taxes on that house are at least 3 times, if not more, because the old tax was taxed at a different rate because it's an older home. A new home is taxed at a much higher rate. So the taxes quadruple. The problem with that scenario is that every time the houses on your block are taxed higher, yours is being pulled because it's measured with the same stick. Not necessarily at the $1.5 million value, but it will definitely have an influence, a severe impact on your taxes if your neighbors start being building houses that are 5 times what your house is worth. The Fifth Ward has seen it many times. I've seen the houses that they knocked down. They bought them for $250,000 to $400,000 to $500,000. It's worth it for them because then they sell the houses for $1.5 million, $1.2 million. So those values keep on going up. Our problem is that we, the residents that have been here for a long, long time, will start paying those taxes at that level as well. And many of us cannot afford to stay in our houses if our taxes get to that level. My taxes, I've been here for 20 years. My taxes have tripled since I came into Evanston in 2004. And what's going to happen in the next 20 years? Probably triple again. But that is exponential. I don't think I can afford that house 20 years down the road. Today I can, fortunately. And I'm not a member of the qualifying seniors that will benefit if there is a circuit breaker for property taxes. But I think that not seeing the big picture of how every single member of our community gets affected by increases in taxes and increasing in living standards, living costs have risen through the roof. We are all paying it. Every time we go to a grocery store, I go, avocados, $4? I used to buy a mango for 75 cents or 99 cents when they were expensive. Now it's $4. And so is everything else, lemons, whatever, a hot dog, everything. Somebody was complaining that hot dog stands are closing because they can't keep up on increasing their prices. So that's with everything else that we do. So not taking this seriously, it is a crime. And I think that we, as members of our community, because we are part of the community, we are because of our community, not taking it seriously is a big mistake. And please don't let our city pay that mistake. And if we're not doing it, okay, then let's stop talking about affordable housing. No more. Let's just be honest about it and say we want the rich to come into Evanston. We have a great lake shore. We have a world-class university in our town. Our downtown is beautiful. Absolutely. Why wouldn't the rich want to be here? Of course. But we have other members of our community, and every one of them is part of me. So I'm talking for them. Thank you.
Next is Tina Payton, followed by Tricia Connolly.
Good evening. I'm here to support, I'm sorry it wasn't on the agenda tonight. I thought it was going to be on the agenda, the property tax circuit breaker program. My family has lived in the same house since 1915. I've lived in the same house for 55 years. And the city took my neighbors for eminent domain. So I'm the only house there. So we give benefits to Northwestern every day. They don't pay for anything. And we're about to pay for this big stadium that we're not going to benefit from. Because their big stadium makes our taxes go up. Them not paying for fire department that goes past my house 1,000 times a day to the campus, that makes our taxes go up. Because somebody's got to pay for it. So while the people with the big purses and big pocketbooks run away with all of the property, 240 acres plus Northwestern owns, tax-free, then all of us here suffer, whether we're a property owner or renter or a landlord. My tax go up, these people's rent goes up that needs apartment. Approving luxury buildings, that makes the tax go up while they get benefits from the taxes. They get a benefit. And who pays? That would be us. So if you really care about helping people who have been here as long as my family's been here, then I suggest when it comes up for a vote, the circuit breaker program, that you support it. And I would even suggest that you expand it. 500,000 is nothing. When I just told you you spent 118 million on some parks. So you need to help people. If you say this committee is about helping the homeless, because that's what this 2026 plan is about, helping homeless, helping people stay in their homes. And also, Trump is cutting, if you didn't notice. He's cutting hard, and next, his proposal is for people who are on long-term housing programs, he's cutting it out. And the 170,000 families will be affected by that. And also, he's saying that 18 months is the longest you can have to be on a voucher. And then you have to go for transitional to pay for an apartment. So let's think about the future. This committee should be thinking about all these cuts. And if you don't know about it, you need to learn about it, because this committee is the Housing and Community Development Committee. And you need to know what policies our president is bringing forward. And you need to support the circuit breaker program and expand it, just like you expand the budget for these parks. Thank you.
Up next is Tricia Connolly.
Good evening. Tricia Conley, 2nd Ward. Thank you for your time tonight. I'd like to again commend Malika Gardner, Council Members Kelly, Suffredin, and Davis for looking for important ways to take some of the pressure off of our most financially burdened homeowners in Evanston by submitting the circuit breaker ordinance proposal. Like others, I find it frustrating and sad as we consistently discussed how to find solutions to financial uncertainty facing some in our community, that this proposal has been sidelined and ignored for over a year. And to add insult to injury, it is not on your agenda tonight. Do we want to start instituting solutions, or do we prefer just to dismiss this? Quoting from yesterday's Evanston Roundtable article regarding property taxes, while property owners are facing modest increases this year, they may face much steeper hikes next year when their tax bills reflect triennial reassessments that have already been completed. I'm asking tonight for committee members to please support the money from the Northwestern Good Neighbor Fund excuse me, for affordable housing to the 2026 Pilot Circuit Breaker Program. This program is designed to help longtime Evanston homeowners stay in their homes and keep our community stable. The funds are already available, and we're counting on your support so we can get movement on helping our homeowners who are most in need. The tax bills have arrived. Part of the reason we have some of the struggle with property taxes in Evanston is specifically because we pick up the tab for Northwestern. If we all want to create a more just system, then it makes absolute sense that our city offers those that need the most help utilize the Northwestern Good Neighbor Fund to assist with financial support with property taxes. Although it's imperative we make a plan for additional long-term solutions, including land trusts, cooperative housing options, and invest in mixed-income social housing solutions, yes, by our city, not by billionaire developers, we've got to enact something that gives people who are struggling more immediate results. People need relief now, and I'm asking you to expedite this important process. This ordinance will provide Evanston the ability to support our community sooner than later. Please vote soon to get this darn thing on the agenda and then send it to City Council. Many lower-income folks that live in more moderate homes should be able to have their home ownership protected. The action or lack thereof will be an indicator whether we're interested in keeping residents in Evanston or if we want to keep in the status quo and continue to allow the conditions that push lower-income homeowners away from our city. Please discuss this tonight. Thank you.
That concludes everyone who signed up for public comment. Are there any other interested in public comment?
Before we go to the next agenda item, we've talked about putting the strategic housing plan, or we already have I think the strategic housing plan scheduled to come back for what meeting?
January.
You know the date?
I can tell you.
Yeah, we'll stand at ease until then.
January 20th.
The 20th, right? Okay, so this will come back on January 20th, or I'm sorry, the circuit breaker program will be discussed on January 20th as part of our strategic housing plan process. Go ahead.
It is currently expected it would be on a January agenda. It will be a separate item from the strategic housing plan. The strategic housing plan will also be discussed in January.
But I'm saying on the 20th.
Yeah.
Right, yes, that's all I'm saying. So I just wanted to establish that early in the meeting. Before I get into a few things, one, I just want to say I appreciate what I believe was a very respectful public comment period. We appreciate everybody that comes out to share, which is why I didn't set a time limit, because something that I've heard consistently during my time in office is that people feel like, one, that the conversation is too one way, which is kind of the nature of public comment, but also that there's not enough time to speak. You know, sometimes you may only have 1 minute to get a lot of information out, which is why I didn't want to cut folks off. We have a little bit of extra time, I think, today because we don't have as much on our agenda. So this was an opportunity. We had an opportunity to allow people to speak further. So I wanted to establish it is going to be on the future agenda in terms of the property tax circuit breaker program, and establish when that will be. So that will be January 20th. To speak quickly to the one-way nature of these conversations before we move on, what's really important to me is that we're all on the same page and sharing the same set of facts as best possible. And so people bring up the inclusionary housing program. They're mentioning 605 Davis. The whole point of the inclusionary housing program is to figure out a way to get affordable housing into market rate development. And so pointing to what the cost of the market rate units is not really an effective way necessarily to talk about the affordable program within that. So yes, you can say the market rate units in 605 Davis are going to be whatever cost was mentioned in public comment. But if we're going to have the same conversation, not two separate conversations, but the same conversation about affordable housing, we have to talk about our inclusionary program and how that relates to 605 Davis, which is the 80-something or so units that will be priced at 60% of the area median income. Now, you can look that up for yourself on what that means and decide whether or not that's affordable enough. 60%, let's just say a household of two, that is $57,000 and $57,600. So a household of two would not be eligible for those units if they made more than that. And so obviously when you think about affordability, it's different depending on household size, income, household size, it changes. But HUD has decided for many, many decades that affordability starts at 60% AMI or below. The inclusionary housing program really only serves people who are at 60% AMI. Used to be 80% AMI, higher. Now, relatively recently, it's been adjusted to 60% AMI. I think it is entirely appropriate for members of the community to say, well, that's not low enough. Or is there a way we can get that even lower to maybe people who are making 50%, 40%? That's a fair question. I think the appropriate place for that is when we discuss our inclusionary housing program, which this committee does. On many occasions, we've had that as an agenda item. Please, if you have any issue with the affordability aspect of a 605 Davis or any other future plan development, that will be the appropriate time to give us feedback. Hey, we really think we could get lower than 60% AMI, or here are some other things that you may want to add. And so, I again, in an effort to just truly try to make sure we're having the same set of conversation, I think it's important to establish that. I've brought this up before as well, is that when we talk about affordable housing, I'll take Ms. Payton's point because I think it was a good point. And what I would say is that most of our parks and rec improvements are done through our CIP program, our capital improvement program. And so we're bonding out to pay for those improvements. And then we do pay for it, but it more so, it raises our debt service, which is not $40 million, $50 million, when we take those out. We pay a lower amount, obviously, over time, over the life of the bond. And so it's not like it's cash out of our general fund that we're spending towards making those improvements. Now, I have, and other people have actually thought about, should we bond out for affordable housing? I've brought that up in meetings. That is something that I think is a fair thing to look at, because it does allow us to leverage, tens of millions of dollars every year towards something, as Ms. Payton said, is a priority. And so that is, I think, something that is worth discussing. What I'll also say, though, is that you also have to look at the private investment. And so there's no private investment in park improvement. So when you look at how much dollars are going to that, you really have to look at the city, because nobody else is really, for the most part, is really investing in our parks. And so you have to look at private investment. So 605 Davis, the 86 units are there. You got to tally that up, right? Church and Darrow, that's HODC, 33 units. That's probably $30-40 million. You got to tally that into it. Pearl on South Boulevard, on and on and on and on. And so I think that's a good exercise to do. I think it was incomplete, though. And so we would have to add on all those other both public and private investments to affordable housing, which there's been many. The other piece of this that I truly just want people to understand, and I'm only doing this because I truly want us to be on the same page. And everybody that knows me knows I would love to speak with people one-on-one, small groups, so that we can all get on the same page, because I want people to have this feedback. The thing that makes me uncomfortable, because we have a staff that's working their butts off, people that were elected because of, how much property taxes are going up, affordable housing, all of that. Many people campaign around these things, is that the city is not doing absolutely zero on affordable housing. And to say that ignores the CDBG program, ignores the emergency assistance fund that's providing mortgage assistance support. It ignores the rental assistance program that the city has done over many years, well over a decade. The city has supported people through rental assistance programs. It ignores the investment we just made through ARPA. ARPA was the reason why we were able to, that everybody that was on Wesley was able to be provided a rental assistance voucher. We used ARPA money in order to pay for that. I'm just talking about the dollars that went out for it. And so there have been efforts, and there continues to be efforts over many years to invest in affordable housing. Do we have to do more? Of course, we could always do more. But let's not ignore the investments that are going into affordable housing. As I said before, many people, but for those investments, would not still be here in Evanston. So just wanted to establish those things. Sir, we got to, if I could continue the meeting, please. And so,
responsible was being said. So if you make responsible what we say, are we not allowed to respond back to you?
at the appropriate time we can, but now at the appropriate time we could do that, but not now, sir.
Nobody else is going to be able to get a chance to speak.
No, you will. I gave plenty of time in the beginning of the meeting. I will absolutely give time, as I did in the beginning of the meeting. Okay, so I just wanted to establish those things. And again, in between meetings, if y'all want to reach out, I think this whole committee would love to learn more about what people's perspectives are. But I just wanted to establish those things. All right, so next up we have the
Approval of minutes.
I'm sorry, is there a light?
Councilmember
Rogers, sorry about that.
I have a light on. I'd just like to respond to one thing.
Yeah, please.
When we speak about luxury developments downtown providing affordable housing for us, by the admission of the developer who last spoke to us, they have to subsidize those units by increasing the costs on the other units. So we created 84 affordable housing units. We also created 335 units that subsidized those units by having an increase in their cost. So it's not truly market rate. It is being bumped above market rate because of that. So if we want to level set and all be talking about the same thing, that's one of the problems I have with our inclusionary housing ordinance in these large buildings or even the small buildings. Every unit you make less than the cost of building, the other units have to take on that cost. So I just want to make sure that when we're talking about these things, we're also looking at that.
Yeah, for sure. And again, as a as a member of the Housing Community Development Committee, like, please, when we discuss, I think we're talking about inclusionary. I mean, it's going to be about something very specific, but maybe that gives us an opportunity to talk about some other things as well. But on a future agenda, we're going to be talking about aspects of inclusionary housing. Like, let's discuss it. I think my point is that, like, when we are discussing inclusionary housing program, I'd rather the discussion, if people have concerns, I think the most constructive way to better understand those concerns and to weigh them is during those times. Because if it doesn't happen, what I see is people, again, whether it's market rate or luxury, all of that still doesn't get at is the cost of the affordable units. Like, it's the affordable units that help us to expand our inclusionary housing program. But regardless, within that, if folks have any concerns about it, to me, that's the most constructive time to hear that feedback, because that's literally when we're considering amending our program. And so if there's a way to improve it, let's do that during that time. Yeah, but I agree with you. Yeah,
entirely what I intend to do.
Please, yeah.
I asked staff, Director Flax just the other day where we were on the inclusionary housing, because I have some issues with some of the stuff that's in there, with the bonus units that are allotted, that sort of stuff. So I look forward to having that conversation.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Are there any other lights on for this? No comments? All right. All right, next up we have.
So I will move approval of Special Housing Community Development meeting minutes from November 6th.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been probably moved and seconded. Any changes? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, we have approved minutes. Next up is, somebody wants to move, what is that, 6A?
I will move introduction of the draft 2026 action plan to be recommended for approval to City Council.
I'll second it.
All right. Yes, we have a presentation. Thank you,
Yes.
Mary.
Can you hear me okay? I think you probably need to move. Here? Can you hear me better? That's a little bit better, yeah. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. So, Marian Johnson, Housing and Grant Supervisor, here to present the 2026 Draft Action Plan. This is a plan, and you can go to next slide. Keep going. Okay. So, because it's been a little while since we talked about the action plan and we have a couple new committee members, I just wanted to give kind of a big picture of where we're at in the process and what this meeting entails. We're at the November meeting for the draft action plan. This is usually when we post the draft action plan, open it for public comment, and give you an overview of what's in the plan. In December, we come back to HCDC to hear more public comment, to close public comment, to have the committee vote on the allocation by goal, by percentage of the grants, to vote on the actual plan, as well as hear more information. And then following the HUD schedule, we come back to you in March with the consolidated annual performance evaluation report for you to review and place on file. This is the report that we submit to HUD every year that essentially takes the previous year action plan, looks at what was accomplished, and then reports on the performance. And then at some point, which is why there's a question mark there, between usually April and July, but it could be as early as February and as late as question mark, Congress votes a budget, HUD releases allocations for the city, and we have final allocation for that year, so 2026. And that allows us to either finalize the action plan and send it to City Council if there's no changes based on what you had approved in December, or it triggers a substantial amendment, and then we come back to you with a new draft, reopen public comment, and restart kind of the conversation. And at that point, we have a very limited time frame because we have to submit a final plan to HUD within 60 days. So that's essentially kind of where we're at in the process. We're just at the beginning, November meeting. Next slide, please. Yes, so as I mentioned before, November meeting, this is an introduction. I'm going to try to give you as much information as possible so that we're ready for December, which December is usually a pretty lengthy meeting with a lot of things to review. And since we have a lighter agenda tonight, that would be good information for you to take away. And then December is really the final votes on everything. We're required to have a vote by December so that we can start spending money in January 1. And that's part of the reason why in December we not only vote on the plan, but we also come to you with funding request application for existing programs that are meant to continue and start as of January 1 so they can have funding and keep going. Example of those programs, if the action plan is approved, would be the housing rehab program, the code enforcement program, as well as any funding for public infrastructure, which need to be approved so they can start working on design. When it comes to the process, we specifically discuss allocation based on estimated grants and allocation by percentage of a goal. So essentially, you're looking at the key goals that are in the plan, and we're allocating a % of the grant. And the reason we do that is because we don't really know what the final grant is going to be. So we need to have as much flexibility as possible to get your direction on where we're going with the plan, but also limit any kind of admin work that would trigger a full redo of the plan just because we got $300 more than expected. So as such, you're voting on allocation by percentage of goal. If the grant is a little higher, and we do not see a need to kind of switch things around with the percentage that I will show you later, then it just goes along with the same plan that you voted on. It just, each goal has a little bit more money. If there's a big difference, so as an example, this year you'll reviewed a new plan and we had to post a new one because we received the ESG and we weren't planning on that. So that was a major change, a new source of funding. At the same time, because the grant was much higher than what we had projected, there was also the need to kind of reallocate things so that one goal wasn't too high, essentially, because it was getting too much funding compared to what we could reasonably spend in the time that we had. So if there's a change that's more than 20% of a goal, that would also trigger a substantial amendment. We would come back to the committee and we would restart that process. And that's usually happening around May or June. For 2026, we're suggesting slight changes. So in the 5-year consolidated plan, we had estimated funding for CDBG at $1.375 million. For this year, this may not continue, but for this year, based on the funding that we got this last year in 2025, and based on where the conversation is at with Congress, we think it's 1.69 is probably closer to what we could potentially get. The only information we have available right now is the budget that have been released by the Senate and the House, and they both have CDBG as flat to this year. So that's what we're going with, essentially, and that's the reason for the change. We don't necessarily expect this will continue, so you may see that next year when we come back, we might revert to the $1.375 million. But for now, we're using this estimate based on the information we have available. And that allows us also to present you allocation by goals that are hopefully closer to what the final grant would be. For home, we have an estimate of $275,000 with program income that's $25,000 to bring the total to $300,000. This is what was in the consolidated plan. If we do get home, we expect it should be around this. There's very much of a question mark. We're not exactly sure. There's been budgets with home fully funded, home at 50%, and no home. So we just have to have something in the plan, and we're hoping this is the most likely scenario. Given where things are with the budget conversation, there's a good likelihood that we will be coming back with a substantial amendment next spring like we did this year. But we're trying to get as close as possible at what the reality could be. And then we are not planning for ESG, which is Emergency Solutions Grant. We got ESG this year. We're following, I think I've mentioned it before, we're following a little bit the same path as what Oak Park went through, which is they got it for 1 year, then they didn't get it for 2 years, then they got it again, and that was the last time they got it. So we felt it was safer to plan for no ESG, especially because that grant is also kind of in question at the national level. If we were to get ESG, we would come back to the committee, of course. So to give you, this is the chart that was in the memo that gives you kind of a perspective on the actual funding we got this year and what we're estimating for 2026, what our allocation by goal by percentage of grants are based off. And those are the same numbers that I was just talking about before. So you can see there's two columns. There's just the grant, and then there's a program income that we get that is usually repayment of prior efforts that are paying back into the fund. So an example of program income would be the housing program is a 0% loan. So homeowners, when they have to repay the loan, which is usually when they sell their property, those funds go back into the program and are allocated specifically for that same program to keep it sustainable. So those are projections. So you can see on the left, there's the grant only, and the second column is the grant plus the program income. So for 25, we were at 1.708 for 13, and we're projecting in the plan 1.771 with a slightly lower grant, but higher program income. We work with program income a year behind, so essentially in 26, we'll be using 2025 program income that was receipted. So we have a good idea of what we received already. And this year, 2024 was exceptionally low. This year is back to kind of a regular average. There's not really a great way to project because it really depends on what people do with their homes. Home is pretty flat. It could go higher, but we had $342,000 this last year, and we're projecting at $300,000 to be a little bit conservative. And ESG is essentially at zero. If we get ESG, usually it hovers at $150,000. So that's a little bit of a reduction on the total of funds, mostly impacted by ESG. Next slide. When it comes to our consolidated plan goals, the plan was approved with very specific key goals: affordable housing and homelessness, create livable communities, and public services. Those are pretty standard goals as far as what we can accomplish with the funds and the restriction of the funds that we have: CDBG, home, ESG. Each grant has specific allowable activities, so there's kind of specific activities we can do. Under affordable housing and homelessness, the type of activity we're talking about funding usually is access to rental housing, which would be our tenant-based rental assistance with home, but also home acquisition and rehab projects. There's also maintaining and improving rental and owner-occupied housing, so that would be a housing rehab program and code enforcement as an example. Created livable communities, it's specifically related to the improvement of public infrastructures when it comes to this. So when we're talking public infrastructure for this program, it's specifically CDBG, and usually it's alley paving, sidewalks, or park improvement that are in specific eligible area benefiting eligible households. There's very few parks that are falling under this category. And in December, for 2026, we're not projecting any other improvements so far than sidewalks based on what can actually qualify for those funds. Public services, there's a specific cap for public services. This is CDBG funded. We're capped at 15%, sorry. And that's usually what we put in the plan. As part of the consolidated plan, there was a goal set to focus public services on housing-related public services, and that's what we're hoping to do starting in 2026, and that will be addressed with the Social Service Committee. So here's a general summary of how the funding is currently slated in the draft action plan and what we will be specifically reviewing, voting on at the December meeting. So you've got on the left each of the consolidated plan goals: affordable housing, creating livable communities, homelessness, public services, and then admin. You can see the specific type of funding that we are allocating with the source. Not every activity can use every source of funding. It's very key to understand. And then you can see the percentage of funding. So affordable housing, we're suggesting using 47% of the total grants to fund affordable housing activity. And you can add to that the homelessness dollars as well. The affordable housing funding is split between.
Quick question.
Yeah.
This page, is this in our packet? And if so, where?
That page, that chart specifically is not in your packet, but there's a version slightly more detailed as an attachment in your packet that is color coded with CDBG, home, and ESG.
You said there's a more detailed version of this in our packet?
Yes.
Okay. Is this it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right.
And I can, I have it also in a folder. So if you'd rather review that, I'm happy to review that.
Yeah, let's review what's in our packet, just as
Anna, do
people
you
are reviewing it at home, they'll better understand how to do that.
It's in the November folder, the meeting. It can be sometimes hard to see on the screen, so I try to give a summary version. Okay. So this is the chart. Oop.
It's dollar amounts, but not necessarily the activity or what we plan to spend it on. I think. So in some ways, the other one might be helpful because I feel like it gave more of an explanation. It does it? I don't.
Yeah.
I see like the broad categories like affordable housing, homelessness, but I don't see. I feel like the other document had some additional explanation.
So I can run through it, and then you can let me know if it's missing any information you didn't have.
Okay.
But I
guess what I'm trying to understand is if you have any ideas on, if you already have ideas on how you want to use the money, like rental assistance, TBRA, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you can mention that as you're going through this.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
So on and
TBRA, yeah.
Anna, can you make it a tiny bit, like zoom in a little bit? Yeah, you maybe, oh, you know what? It's bottom right before the screen sharing. You might need to move that window. Yep, there's a little zoom thing here. Okay. Let's see if we can go up. Okay, so this is the page that is in the packet, and that's a chart we keep track of annually. So on the left, you've got the goals. So you can see affordable housing goal, then you jump to the next one is homelessness, livable community, public services. And then it's color coded.
I'm sorry, does everybody know, has everybody found this? Because sometimes I don't think we slow down and make sure everybody's, has it up? Okay, you don't have it up? Okay, so you can go to, are you on the city's website? You want to show her, Sean? Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Councilmember Burns.
Councilmember Hedekata, sorry.
So, quick question for Marion. Yeah. So, I think, especially since we have new members, are you going to maybe explain, because we use a lot of acronyms here, kind of explain how TBRA works and
sure,
maybe have like, and also CDBG and what that, yeah, great.
I can do that, yeah. So on the left, you've got the goals that were in the 5-year consolidated plan.
If you could just give it another moment, I think we're almost there. Almost there. I just know from talking to new members of committees, sometimes we just go into it and like blah 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 blah, and they're still trying to like understandably make sure they're on the same page. Okay, so we're all together now. All right, thank you. Yep.
Thank you. So on the left, the goals that are part of our 5-year consolidated plan that was voted by the committee and city council earlier this year. So the annual action plan is derived from that 5-year plan. You have the affordable housing goal, homelessness goal, livable community goal, public services, and then we'll go a little lower. It has all the goals. Administration goal, essentially. And can you go back up? So the color coding is based on, it's just for the line that's for the the first line, that's the total allocation for that goal. So in blue, you've got CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grant. In yellow, you've got the Home Investment Partnership Grant. And in green, you've got ESG. Each goal has sometimes a variety of funding, sometimes only one source of funding. And that's related to how we can use those funds, whether the grant is eligible for the kind of activity that's under this goal. So if I start with affordable housing goal, you can see we show you 2023, the actual, 2024 actual, 2025 actual, and what we're discussing in is the last column that's highlighted in yellow, which is the 2026 estimated grant goal by percentage. So what you would be voting on at the December meeting is the percentage associated with each goal for each grant. So as an example, CDBG is currently showing that 48.6% of the CDBG grant would be allocated to affordable housing goal, which is $861,000. And then 33% of the home grant would be allocated to affordable housing activity. That makes a total of 46.4. This is the 46.4 is what you'd be voting on. We're suggesting allocating 46.4% of the total grant to affordable housing activity. Now, affordable housing activities are composed of the following for the city of Evanston. That is the housing rehab program, which is the first two rows, because it includes some grant funds as well as some program income, because all the program income from housing rehab goes back to housing rehab. So we track it separately to make sure that's clear.
And I'm sorry, one more time, the difference between the EN and the RL again?
EN is the money we get from HUD it's the grant we get from HUD. So 2020, if we get a grant in 2026, that is entitlement grant, that's just a grant. Program income is money that we've loaned to a homeowner for a program that they were eligible for. Let's say it was 15 years ago. And then they sell their property and they repay that loan. And that goes back into the program.
With the RL, PL,
RLPI, yes.
Or PI or whatever.
Yeah, RL is revolving loan.
Is what we're going to get, what we expect to get in 2026 from people paying back their loan.
81,000 is what we got this year so far. And that's what we're using for next year. Okay, so 25 goes to 26. In 25, we use 24 program income.
And just for everybody's understanding, this is the CDBG program.
It is the, yes, Community Development Block Grant.
You may recall that in the beginning, I mentioned that one of the ways we're investing in low-income homeowners is through our CDBG program. Not for everybody doesn't like it, but it's a no-interest deferred loan. There's no interest, and you don't have to, as long as if you continue to transfer the property to your family, the way I understand it is the loan never is due. It's only when you sell the property that you have to pay the money back, but it's no interest. So again, this is one of the many ways that for a long time through this revolving loan fund program that the city has invested in low-income homeowners to help them with home rehab projects.
Yeah. Community Development Block Grant is funds that are meant to benefit households that are at or below 80% area median income. So every single one of the activity that is a requirement that it benefits household under 80%. We have a target that at least 70% of our fund are used for that income limit. The target for us is 100%. There's so much need. We never go above 80% in our eligibility. Every single activity must meet that requirement, but there's also additional requirement based on the kind of activities that's being undertaken and the restriction that HUD puts around it. So as an example, just to simplify, you can't just do any parks or any sidewalk in an area that's in a high percentage low mod. You need to have the project in the right area, but you need to show that the households that are living in that area are actually going to benefit from it. So a business that would get economic development, CDBG, we would have to prove that business is actually providing services that a household at or below 80% would actually use. So a fancy goods store in a low-income area would not be eligible for those funds, as an example. When it comes to affordable housing, we have a separate goal, which is homelessness. That's the majority of that goal is essentially our tenant-based rental assistance. That's a program that is funded through our home grant. It's the $175,000, and it's 58% of the home grant that we're suggesting allocating to this. The tenant-based rental assistance is a program that provides up to 24 months of rental assistance for families below 60% area median income. One of the challenges with those funds, and one of the reasons why we don't allocate more funding, is because the availability of housing, rental housing that's available for families that are at that income level is not endless and pretty limited, and so capacity can sometimes be impacted. We're still working on, I believe we're spending 2023 funding right now. We're always looking to expand capacity on this program, but that's part of the reason why we don't allocate more funding on this program. It also allows us to allocate the balance of the funding to the home affordable housing goal, which allows us to fund acquisition and rehab programs that would create new affordable rental housing. Usually it tends to be gap funded that's added to another source of funding. An example of that would be the HODC project that was funded a couple years ago. That was, the funding was commingled with Affordable Housing Fund, ARPA, and TIF funding.
Total on that again, was that 4 million?
4 million,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's approximately, I think, $500,000 of home. Oftentimes we have to wait because it's very limited funding and it's very restrictive funding. So we usually kind of stack several years together before we fund a project.
So I don't want to breeze through that. Again, mentioned earlier that some of the dollars that the city uses to support affordable housing units is through acquisition and helping people with acquisition and construction. We gave $4 million to help make HODC 33 units, 100% affordable housing on Church and Darrow. The city was sued. We recently settled that, so that'll be built. But the city contributed $4 million towards that. And that's, again, not the first investment the city has made. That's just the most recent one. I think we used TIF funds. Home, might have been some home funds, right?
ARPA, affordable housing, and home.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
We also did a land swap that facilitated the development too.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so we had homelessness ends up, so it's 58% of the home grant, ends up being 8.4% of the total grants. And then livable community, which is what we talked about, it's public and infrastructure improvement. We're suggesting a allocation at 18% of the CDBG grant. This is the only grant that can be used for this kind of project.
I'm sorry, where are we at now?
Livable communities.
We're at livable communities, okay.
Yep.
Before we go on to that, the
Yep.
TBRA, does it not have to go toward supporting families with school-age children or children under
does.
65? Okay, I don't know if that was mentioned.
I did not mention.
But I
Thank
just
you
wanted to
for
make sure
clarifying.
y'all all knew that. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So
But another thing too, I thought we don't just give that to Connections that facilitates that. We administer that ourselves, because I know you said we haven't used all the money.
no.
Or how does that work?
So the TBRA program, we have an agreement with Connection for the Homeless. They administer the program. However, it is all passed through. They provide the administration, but we don't pay for any of that. So when we have allocated $175,000 of home TBRA, it's $175,000 of rental subsidies. Connection takes care of the administration of the program without charging.
I thought you said at one point that we still have money left, and my thought was we transfer to them. They almost always, if not always, use all of those funds for that year. But you just said something that made me think like there was still some funding left.
Yeah, so they are working on the current cohort they're working on, and they're meeting their agreement.
Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're able to spend all $175,000 every year. The cohorts are 2 years, and it usually takes quite a while. It can take 3 to 6 months sometimes between the moment a family is eligible and they found housing that's eligible and approved. So right now we're trying to work with them to see if we can find ways to increase capacity in a reasonable manner based on the inventory. But yeah, I just wouldn't keep suggesting allocating more money until we've spent what we currently have.
Okay. Yep. Perfect.
Okay, livable communities. So we're at 18% of CDBG. That is about 15% of the total grant. It's a massive reduction from previous 5-year plan. That was the decision made as part of the 5-year consolidated plan, reducing the allocation for those type of activities and increasing greatly allocations for affordable housing. We do keep those activities because it helps provide necessary improvement. It also helps with timeliness of expenditure. As part of the community development block grant, we have a specific requirement to not have more than 1.5 times the annual grant balance in unspent dollars as of November 1. We get our grants very, very late. This year we got them late September. So finding ways to make sure we're able to spend the dollars so we don't lose any dollars whatsoever. We have to find a balance with priorities, but also projects that are guaranteed to expend funds by the deadlines so we don't lose anything. For this goal, we will be coming, the Public Works team will be coming with a funding request application for 2026. They are likely to apply for sidewalk projects between 2 and 4 in eligible areas and high need areas in CDBG target areas. It's, as I mentioned in the memo, it's been a little bit challenging in previous years to make sure that we can qualify projects under this activity, but sidewalks seem to be one of the eligible projects that we can do with those funds.
We've done alleys before under this as well, or no? Was that
We
a
have
different
done,
category?
yeah, that's exactly that. In the past, we've done quite a bit of alley paving, and there's still need for that, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to qualify the projects with those funds and to also kind of get the benefits. A lot of the alleys that are left in CDBG areas are alleys with very few residents. So the dollar investment can be tricky even to justify to HUD.
And before Councilmember Hadakazi goes, can you also explain, you're familiar with the new, that we've moved away from the 50/50 sidewalk program. We now have a different way that we improve sidewalks. Are you familiar with that enough to explain that for the committee?
I'm not familiar enough to speak to it.
Yeah, so the bottom line, as I understand it, is used to be 50/50 program where, some of it was paid for by the homeowner, or property owner, I should say, and then the other half by the city. I think there was some, what I understand is non-response bias, where the people that kind of were aware of it and reached out about it were obviously more likely to be eligible for the program. And so as a way to make the program more equitable, now the city has said we'll pay 100% of the cost, but we're going to prioritize which sidewalks we do first. And so you can find that on the city's website, the prioritization and where your particular sidewalk falls within that prioritization.
You mean alley or sidewalk?
Sidewalk. Hopefully, I've just been saying sidewalks. My bad. Sidewalks. So there's a whole on the city's website. It's the prioritization. I know, like, for example, sidewalks that are around schools, nursing homes. Those are like phase 1. But because we're taking on 100% of the cost, I can see why they're saying, look, can you help us out with a little bit of funding. So I just wanted to provide a bit more context to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Economic development, I left it on there, even though it's not part of the 5-year consolidated plan, based on where funding was going and how challenging it is to expend CDBG funds in economic development. We moved away from funding projects with CDBG, and the economic development team will use other funding sources instead. So I just kept it for reference. But you can also see the last few years we had not allocated funds, and we still have funds left from a previous year.
And I'm sorry, Councilmember Hidekadis had his light on.
Oh, I just had a question about the CDBG eligible areas. Do we have a map? 'Cause I know.
Yes. So as part of the 5-year consolidated plan, we get updated census data, and we created an updated CDBG target area map that includes areas, census tracts that are 51% or more households under 80% AMI as a congregate. So what we ended up doing for this year is we refocused the map to be more focused, essentially, and use a collaboration with the property standards team who did an overview of the exterior condition, because the CDBG target area map is specifically used for code enforcement activities to understand which areas can be billed to CDBG or not. The map itself does not enter into play for activities such as public improvements. For that, we use just the general low moderate income census data per tract, and we have to create an area of essentially benefit and make the case to HUD that this specific area is eligible under the fact that it's used by XYZ household from those specific census tracts.
So it would be great for when we have our follow-up meeting in December just to see those maps.
Yep.
Because I know in years past we see, the maps, and I think it gives a good context of what areas are eligible. Because it's, we're talking census data, so it's not by ward. It's
Right.
always weird, like love your block grant program. It's like there was a small carve out of the 9th ward. 8th ward was eligible, 5th ward. So I think that's just that'd be.
And we can after I finish that, we can bring this up fairly easily, so
okay.
we can go over the two maps so that the committee can see kind of what areas we're talking about
That'd be awesome. 'Cause
specifically.
I searched for it and I couldn't find it. So.
Oh, the maps are not necessarily posted on the website on their own. They might be on the comp plan page, but they are attachment to every action plan and consolidated plan. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
And yes, usually at the December meeting, we provide that. Now, the maps don't necessarily, it gives you an idea, but for a large, because we are shifting focus towards affordable housing, most of those programs, housing rehab specifically, is based on household eligibility. So the map doesn't necessarily play a part there because they have to go through a whole income certification process to be able to qualify for the program. So it's applicable to anyone in the city as long as they meet the requirement.
We're going to go to member in Tamara.
Yes.
You can go ahead, yep.
I had a question regarding the economic development piece of it and funding toward it. And I know you mentioned, thank you, and explained the reason why it was left in. And so I had questions around that, but I also had a question around whether or not the city has ever thought about applying for new market tax credit funding with the CDFI fund in order to secure dollars for affordable housing development, which is considered economic development with the CDFI fund. And I looked up some examples that could serve as models, like the City of Chicago developed the Chicago Development Fund in 2005 and secured new market tax credit funding in various years through 2006 and 2023. And Indianapolis created the Indianapolis Redevelopment CDE Limited Liability Corporation that was formed in 2009 in order to administer the new market tax credit funding that they received and applied for from the CDFI fund. I know it's a super heavy lift to complete the application and to administer it. And this year's funding cycle has already passed, but if there were any thoughts around exploring that, and I would be happy to help out with something like that.
I appreciate that. I would have to get back to you on the CDFI specifics. I would imagine that it would be the kind of conversation we would tee up after strategic housing plan when we start, once those goals have been set and we start looking at available funding sources as well as potential funding sources. That might be a good conversation. But I'd have to get back to you on whether we've considered in the past. I believe we haven't discussed it in the recent past, but I would need to check with Director Flax as far as further back.
Thank you.
Member King.
I want to go back. I have a question on the tenant-based rental assistance. You mentioned something, about Connections running the program. You mentioned, trying to build more capacity there. So what does that mean? I don't know what that means in terms of building capacity for that program.
So one of the things we're discussing right now is, so under public services, we're trying to make a shift to prioritize the dollars, the 15% of CDBG that historically went to general public services, to focus them specifically on housing-related services. One of the reasons we did this is because City Council had a goal to find new funding sources for rental assistance. And while CDBG does not allow for rental assistance program, they do allow under public services for an emergency subsistence payment that could essentially act as a short-term rental assistance, so no more than 3 months, kind of. And one of the conversation we are having is around adding this program, creating this program essentially with those funds. Some of the challenges that we're finding around the tenant-based rental assistance is that there's no money for administration of the program. So we're discussing with Connection whether having funds for building capacity, meaning staff, would help with the capacity on top of the partnerships that they're trying to establish with landlords and all the other works they're doing. We're in conversation, but we're trying to have frank conversation around what's really truly needed. And the goal would be to come back, of course, to HCDC to, we will have to come back either because it's a new program. So to come back to talk about the rental assistance, emergency subsistence payment, very important to not state this as rental assistance under CDBG, and to discuss how that program can work. Added capacity, as an example, the kind of conversation we're having is the funding available under tenant-based rental assistance is not enough for full workload for a case manager, but if we add this new program, then maybe there's potential for them to hire somebody, or there's just a whole host of logistics around increasing capacity, and that's what we're discussing right now.
And is that, in your estimation, is that why we're not able to spend?
No.
So I guess
I think it's a mix of factors, but I think they've been pretty clear that it can be challenging to find large enough units. This is a program that's specific for families under a very specific income level that need larger units. The subsidies is for 2 years, so they need to find a landlord that's willing to work with them. Yeah, there's a host of challenges. I don't think there's just one factor.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess, just trying to reconcile having a lot of extra money and yet, seeing that in the analysis that it's kind of the,
And I just want to make sure
it's the
that
number one thing
it's
people
not
are
perceived as me saying there's no need. There's obviously a need.
Yeah.
The fact that the money is maybe not being spent as fast as we would want, and by we, I mean all of us in this room, including Connection and including the families benefiting from it, doesn't mean that there's no need.
So is it fair to say that it's both a part of the issue is lack of capacity on Connection's end, or lack of availability of units that
I
are
think the
available.
stronger factor is the lack of availability
Lack
of
of
units.
availability of
Yeah,
units.
they've made it quite clear as far as what's the challenge.
And I'm not trying to make a comment about connections. I'm just trying to
No, I
better
understand.
understand kind of,
Yeah.
if they're doing it for free without, if this is just all pass-through money. So just,
Yeah.
thanks.
The last goal on this list is administration of the goal. So we're under the maximum admin cap that HUD provides for.
Oh, I'm sorry, because I lost it and I just found it on this last point. Can we also make sure we're looking at the health department as to administer the program? Because they have currently an emergency assistance program. Part of that funding can go towards rental assistance, or an emergency assistance in for all different types of purposes. If you have like a loss in the family or a reduction in income, there's all these different criteria they have. But I think it might potentially fit well within that program. They may have the current capacity from a staffing standpoint to administer it. So I'd also just like you to reach out to them and see if it's something that they could also potentially do.
I could. It's not a ton of money to have two different parties managing the funds. It's also a really, really high compliance requirement.
Okay.
I'm happy to. It's usually
Yeah, I was just
essentially what
checking with
limits
them.
who we
Yeah.
can work with, because it is quite burdensome.
Yeah.
When it comes to documentation, income certification, all that
Okay. All right.
process.
Yeah.
But we do work with that team, so I'm happy to reach out, and they're fully aware that Connection administers some of our funds when it comes to ESG or home. So I could even just make sure they're aware that they can refer people as well. But yeah, we can absolutely reach out.
And then for the TBR units, do they have to be priced at a certain amount in order to be eligible? Can
And
you
that used to be
describe that again?
Yeah,
Or
that used to
explain
be a challenge. So they have to be rented at what HUD considers farm market rents, which is set by zip codes. And we did during COVID had quite a bit of challenges with those fair market rents being quite low. They did increase them quite a bit. So we've gotten feedback that's a little bit less of a challenge now. But yes.
I just wanted to point that out because this is a subsidy program, you would think that we wouldn't have an issue finding units because it can subsidize market rate units, but because sometimes that they have a can't be rented for more than X amount. I think that also plays into it.
Right. There's the component of 60% EMI. You have to be able to, for a landlord, they're going to look at, can this family sustain the rent at 60% EMI? And so they're eligible for the program because they make less than 60% area median income. They get the subsidy, but the subsidy is only 2 years.
Yeah.
So what happens after that is often the question.
Yeah. Which
and-
technically, especially if it's 2 years, I don't think that a landlord could deny them based on that because it's a year-to-year lease. You can't. It's possible within 2 years you can find new employment. You're not supposed to discriminate against source of income. So that piece shouldn't be an issue with them concerned about 2 years. They could be concerned about it, but I don't think it's a legal reason why they could deny
Right.
somebody an apartment. But I just wanted y'all to understand how those thresholds sometimes make it difficult for the program as well.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was just at administration goal. We kept it under the allowed cap. Some of the administration on this program can be quite cumbersome and burdensome. So the CDBG grant is currently allocated at 19% of the grant, the cap being 20%. And that's staff cost, as well as other administration costs. Software, training, these kind of things. And then the home grant is at 8%. I believe the cap is on 9.5% or 10% on home grant. We don't currently have an allocation for ESG, although we are still, will be managing ESG funds from previous years. So those funds go to staff cost in the current year, but we're managing the current year grant as well as previous year funding and programs that maybe don't have funding anymore but are still current.
I just realized too, so the public services, the emergency or the one-time assistance, or whatever it is, you're saying that will fall under the 250, the new program you just talked about? Okay.
Yeah. And
then
that's a new program, so we're still figuring out how to build this program, make sure it's eligible under the host of requirements from HUD.
And then the 322 for livable, for public, under livable communities goal, public improvements, is the public works request going to be for that full amount?
Yeah, actually, that's a really great question. It's something I want to clarify. So right now, what you're looking at is more details than usually. So what the committee is voting on is the allocation by goal, not the program.
Yeah.
So you're just stating, I'm allocating 15, can you go up a little bit? I'm allocating 18% of CDBG, well, actually 15% of the total grant to public, to creating livable community, which in this case is public infrastructure based on our plan. Once you voted on that and approve that, and the plan is approved, then you get funding request and you approve or not specific funding request. So the fact that you're voting on, as an example, $861,000 of CDBG being allocated to affordable housing does not guarantee that the programs I've mentioned will be funded as such. You still have to discuss and approve those funding requests individually.
Okay.
When it comes to public infrastructure, we usually work a year behind based on how spending works. So when Public Works comes with an application for funding in December, I have to check my list, but I believe it would mostly include 24 and 25 funding. 26 will come to you the year later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't know how much they'll need out of that 322 just yet. That'll come.
We know it's less than what they would want.
Okay.
Much less. As an example, it's not enough for one alley. Based on everything, on average, all the alleys we've reviewed with them, they were in the $400,000
3 would be low. Yeah.
It very much based on rough recollection, but I think depending on how many projects they come to us, and that'll depend on some of the funding availability and the eligibility. I think that was going to hover around $400,000, but they haven't submitted their application request just yet.
Okay. And just so everybody's on the same page, we would be voting on these allocation amounts for introduction this evening, correct? After the presentation, or no?
You're not voting this evening. This is just a conversation. This is the opening of the public comment. You will be voting next month.
Because I saw it was for introduction. So are we making any vote tonight on this
No.
at all? No? Okay.
No,
All right.
it's really, we want to give the committee at least a month to kind of absorb this as information, have a conversation, provide some feedback if needed. This is I would say, somewhat of an easier year because we've discussed the consolidated plan so much in the last year and a half. And this is essentially like the second year of the consolidated plan. So we're following those guidelines, and we got direction from the committee that you wanted to generally stick to that plan back in September. So what's happening in December is really the vote of the allocation by percentage at the goal level, and then the vote on the plan.
Okay.
Once that's done, then we can start talking about funding requests.
All right. Any additional questions? Did you have anything else? I'm sorry, with the action plan?
No, but I'm happy to have Anna try to pull up the maps if that's helpful for context. And it might take a little bit.
And we could probably circulate those. Are you cool with that, Councilmember Hedekatis? Yeah. 'Cause I don't think we're going to necessarily discuss them right now. So let's just make sure we circulate the maps to the full committee. And then if there are no questions, let's move into our last agenda item, the short-term rentals update, I think is what I saw.
Yes, I have a statement to read, providing an update from the policy side of the team.
And just so I know, so we don't have anything in our packet to look at for short-term rentals, right? This is just
No, this
okay,
is
just wanted to
essentially
make sure.
just an update at where it's at.
Okay, perfect.
So can you still hear me? Because I just moved the microphone. Okay. A referral was made by several city council members on August 29th 2025 for a 90 days pause on accepting applications for short-term rentals. The City Council approved Resolution 70R25 authorizing a moratorium on the issuance of new vacation rental licenses for non-owner occupied properties for 90 days at its meeting in September 8th, 2025. During the moratorium, new rules and policies for short-term rentals would be developed for review by this committee, whose recommendation would move to City Council for approval. Revisions to the ordinance were discussed at 2 HCDC meetings on October 21st and November 6th. However, additional changes were discussed. Following discussion on November 6th, HCDC directed staff to advance the draft ordinance with additional changes to City Council for introduction on November 24th, where it would be tabled to allow HCDC more time to discuss and finalize its recommendation. A resolution to extend the moratorium on accepting applications for short-term rentals will also be on the November 24th City Council agenda. So it's just a quick update since we've had multiple meetings and wanted to let you know where things were moving.
Councilmember Rogers.
Okay, that's not what I proposed at the last meeting. So I'm not going to talk to you about that because you're just reading a statement. I said I would not support an extension on a moratorium unless this reached council on the 24th. So if it's not going to go to council it needs to go to council to be held.
That is what the statement said.
There was no, you said HCDC. Read the statement again for me, please, at the end.
Okay. Following discussion on November 6th, HCDC directed staff to advance the draft ordinance with additional changes to City Council for introduction on November 24th, where it would be tabled to allow HCDC more time to discuss and finalize its recommendation. So it is moving to City Council on November 24th.
City Council can't table something that isn't brought before it.
I believe this, I didn't write the statement, but I believe the statement is saying that staff will bring this item to City Council on November 24th. As an agenda item.
Okay.
Is this what you requested?
No.
Okay.
That's not what I requested. What I had requested was for this body to finish its work, move it to City Council on the 24th, allow City Council to table it on the 24th so further discussion could be held at the council level.
Okay.
But I will take that up with Mr. San Roman and Ms. Flax and anybody else in the chain of command moving up.
Okay. So you wanted this item to be on the agenda tonight?
Because what I don't want to have happen is I don't want it to be stuck in this committee for another 3 months because that was not the intent. The intent was that we would move quickly on this, and we spent the first 45 days of a 90-day moratorium doing nothing. And so I'm not.
Right. I believe the committee did not get to review this item within the first 45 days.
Right. That's
while
what
the
I'm
staff was
saying.
working and preparing.
Right, that's what I'm
plan.
saying. So again, not going to take this up with you. We won't argue this here. I'll take it up with them. But I will not support an extension of a moratorium if it's not before council. And I was the lead sponsor of that piece of legislation.
Okay.
And you mean, so the moratorium is up for the 24th, but not the vacation rental ordinance, and you wanted them both to appear at the
I
same
wanted
time,
the
right?
ordinance to arrive at
At the same
council
time, right?
before we would extend any extension of the moratorium.
Yeah.
What we're doing now is we're taking it to council to say, hey, table this and send it back. That would be the parliamentary maneuver that would be required.
Okay. So to do what you're saying, to Marion's point, we would have needed to discuss that this evening?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe there was some need for maybe legal to review, like some timeline around getting that ready, but.
Yeah, we'll look into that, because I do remember the part of, I know we discussed, it seemed like there was a path where we could, where the ordinance and the moratorium would go to council at the same time. I don't necessarily agree. There was an understanding that they would arrive at separate meetings, and I don't know if that's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. So the special meeting that we had that had the vacation rental as part of that special meeting, which was, 2 weeks ago? Was for the purpose of being able to move the whole thing forward to council. And at that meeting, I was under the impression that we were moving the entire ordinance to council to let council do it. This committee had weighed in, and the reason we wanted this committee to weigh in is because there are 4 members who are not on council and to allow them to have input into it at that second special meeting. So, the thing is, I don't want us to constantly just kind of be dragging our heels on this. And by having it go to council merely to have council table it and kick it back or whatever the maneuver would be, there would be no tabling. It would be a referral back to this committee I thought we were done with that.
Do you feel this committee, though, provided enough feedback already, or do you think we need one more meeting to discuss this? Do you think the HCDC committee needs to discuss the short-term rentals again?
We had a 90-day moratorium, and this committee had 2 opportunities to discuss it.
Yeah.
In 90 days, with the committee that meets monthly, that's 2 months out of 90 days. That's 60 days within that period.
But you think this committee has provided enough input? So it's ready for, I thought it was ready for council, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
That's what I thought we did.
So you're saying,
Send it all to council.
I thought we already sent it to council.
That's what I thought we had done as well.
So that's not what's happening? It's not currently planned to be on the council agenda?
The statement
Ordinance.
states that it is going to go to city council for introduction on November 24th.
The ordinance,
also
not just the moratorium, the ordinance, the short-term rental ordinance?
Yes, the draft ordinance. It does also state that
And
there's a goal to allow HTDC more time to discuss and finalize its recommendation. So if that is not what HTDC is looking for, then
I don't think it is. I know we wanted more time on strategic housing, but not necessarily short-term rentals. I thought we had provided enough feedback. Councilmember Hedekuttis.
Yeah, my recollection, I think I even said like show of hands, does everyone think we've gotten enough feedback? So I think we are all in agreement that it goes to council, we'll hold it, and then we'll work out the details, because I think the most important thing is we wanted all the non-council members to get their feedback in. So I think there's, I don't think we're dragging our feet. I think it's going to go to council and we can hold it for however long.
Hold it at council, I think is understanding, not send it back, because I wouldn't even necessarily support sending it back here.
That was the part of the statement that confused
That threw you off a little bit. Okay, so we just got to clean that up.
To allow HCDC more time to review it.
And honestly, I mean, either way, it's up to council to decide whether or not it comes back. I think there's enough council members up here that understand we've already provided enough input and that we want to hold it at council to stay at council and not to send it back. So I think we can work that out in between meetings to make that clear. Okay, anything else?
No.
All right, does anybody have any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.